Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be discussing Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, continuing along our journey through this book. Today, talking about Chapter 9, the role of family and friends in shaping your habits. This and then the last few episodes were all part of the second section of this book, which is to make a habit attractive. The first part of it was to make it obvious. This is all going along with what James talks about, the 4 steps towards a habit formation, which again, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying, represents the 4 stages of a habit, which is the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. So last time we talked about chapter 8, and we learned about one way to make a habit attractive, and it's by using something called temptation bundling. It's basically answering this question. So you have a behavior that you want to do, but you need to do another behavior that you need to do. So when you do the thing you need to do, you get to do the thing you want to do. So as an example, you want to look at your phone, but you know that for your homework assignment, you need to read 10 pages. So you say, okay, I'm going to read 10 pages and then I'm going to get to look at my phone and browse around TikTok or social media or what have you. Because what James wrote in the last chapter was that we oftentimes get more of an exhilarating response from the anticipation of the reward rather than the reward itself. And he writes it really well. He says, the brain allocates more energy for wanting rewards rather than liking them. So every action is driven by the anticipation of a reward. So that was last time. That was chapter 8. Today, we're going to talk about more external things in making a habit attractive. So, what types of external things are we talking about? Well, what's pretty close to us? We have our family, we have our friends, we have our heritage, we have our culture. This is going to play a role in making habits attractive for us as well. So, James starts out by giving us another anecdote about this guy, Laszlo Polgar, Hungarian guy, 1965. He is adamant that skills are obtained. You're not born with these skills. So he had a quote where he said, a genius is not born, but is educated and trained. And he wanted to put this idea to the test. So this is kind of funny. He's trying to recruit a wife who's on board with this idea. So he writes to this school teacher, Clara, and he basically wants to test out this kind of nature versus nurture argument here. Maybe not a nature versus nurture, but are you born with it or is it developed over time? That's basically what he's trying to test here on his future children. And, they end up having children together, and the Polgar sisters are born, Sophia, Susan, and Judith, and they start playing chess. And over time, they become chess prodigies. They're really, really good at chess. Really, really good at chess. And they're so good that they're even good at like a young age too. I mean, James talks about how some of his daughters, actually all of his daughters, were like chess champions at a very young age. Judith, she was the youngest, but she was the best of all. At 12, she was the youngest player ever listed among the top 100 chess players in the world. And we learned something from this anecdote. And what James writes here is, he says, what we're about to see is whatever habits are normal in your culture are among the most attractive behaviors that you will find. I think what he's getting at here is that these 3 girls grew up playing chess, because that was the thing that Laszlo wanted to get them to excel at. And that's all they knew. They thought that their whole life was chess. Plus, you probably have the pull of having to know that, each of your other sisters is good as chess. But what he's trying to say here is that they grew up in a culture of this activity, and their skills excelled because of it. That's all they were doing. So in this next section, James goes on and he talks about how we are herd animals, and it's very hard for us to do things on our own. As the saying goes, and I didn't realize this is from Game of Thrones here, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. We have this innate need to stay together with a pack of other people because it gives us an evolutionary advantage to mates, to food, etc., to survival, basically. Essentially, collaboration has prevailed over going alone. If you go alone in life, you'll get by. It might not be pleasant, and will your offspring or your seed survive? Likely, maybe not. So, our earliest habits, James writes, they're not chosen, they are handed to us. This is very similar to what we talked about in the 4 agreements, where we have agreements that we are given or that are passed down to us just through family, history, and the people that surround you or the people that raise you. And the agreements can be both good and bad. Some of them can be negative, and that's what he talks about in the 4 agreements. Some of them could be positive. But here, what James is saying kind of goes along with that. Culture is passed down to us, and the expectations are passed down to us, whether it's from family, whether it's about family, whether it's about education, whether it's about money. You follow the habits of your culture without even thinking about it sometimes. And how this goes along with making a habit attractive is that, well, if you have habits that you want to do and you want to make them stick, well, why not surround yourself by this culture that you want to be a part of, the culture that is exhibiting the habits that you want? So, continuing forward, James extrapolates this, and he says that we really initiate habits stemming from 3 groups, and those are the close, the many, and the powerful. So the close, these are people within your immediate social circle. They're the ones that who are the closest to you as far as proximity. They're the people that you see almost every day or interact with every day. This can be family, friends, maybe your coworkers, the people you go to the gym with, etc. So, by nature of them being close, you get most used to seeing them all the time, which means that you are going to be exposed to what they do more often than other people, and you're going to see the habits that they produce. And what James says is we tend to pick up the habits of the people who are close around us. So he talks about a big study of 12,000 people, and how the study was found out that the chances of somebody becoming obese increased by 57% if the person had a friend who became obese. Staggering number. And the inverse was true too. If you had a friend or a partner that lost weight, the chances increased of you losing weight too. So you tend to soak up the qualities and practices of those around you. And it's the same thing too. It's not just physically, like with weight or strength. It's both with IQ as well. If you have a best friend who has a high IQ at a certain age, and I think the certain age here was a pretty young age. I think it was like 12. It meant that when you reach the age of like 15, I think it said, that your IQ is likely to be higher at that age as well. And I think both, when you're surrounded by people who have habits that you want to imitate, you're going to want to do them, but you're also kind of using it as motivation for you. I think that's kind of where it stems from. It's like, oh, this person is smarter. This person is super strong. I want to get like them. So if you want to build better habits, join a better culture. James alludes to. So nothing sustains like joining a tribe. Again, the wolf dies, but the pack will continue to live on. And what ends up happening is that your personal identity changes to fit that of the group in which you're trying to fit into. If you're trying to be, I don't know, more fit or lose some weight, you're going to be going to the gym and you're going to be surrounded by people who are also fit and in shape. And all of a sudden, your identity starts to relate more to them and you start to exude the same habits as them, like cleaning up your diet, being more consistent, going to the gym, etc. But it's not just the close, it's also the many. So it's not just your family and friends around you, but it's also if a ton of people are doing it, that can also influence your habits as well. This was exhibited by experiments by Solomon Asch in the 1950s. He takes a subject and then he takes actors whom the subject does not know they are actors. He shows them cards with lines on them, basically asks them to pick the line between the two different cards that are the same. So he shows it to the subject, he shows it to the actors. The actors purposefully picked an incorrect answer. So they purposely pick a line in the one card that is shorter than the line in the other card. Purposefully a wrong answer. What happens, though, is that the subject, most of the time, also gives an incorrect answer, even though they knew it was wrong. They tend to go along with the group, even though they know that, okay, that line is shorter than this line. Line 2 is the same length, but I have 5 people over here saying that it's line A. I'm going to go with line A. Most of the time, they go with the wrong answer, even though they know that it is wrong. This is the power of imitating the many. Great book on this that explains this is Influence, and you can check out, I did a playlist and videos on the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, and we talk a little bit about this in that book as well. Now, this experiment hinged on one thing, and that's the sheer number of actors. So if you had one subject and just one actor who disagreed with the line length, no change. The person would pick the correct answer most of the time, and there was no change. But now, when you introduce a lot of actors, the conformity of the subject tended to increase as the number of actors disagreeing with the subject increased. And it all just goes to show when we are unsure how to act, we look to the group for guidance. So how does this relate to habits? Well, again, if you see a ton of people doing something, you're more likely to do it as well. If an entire tribe is doing one thing, then you're tending to go along with the tribe. And as James writes here, the normal behavior of a tribe overrides the individual. But this can have downsides. Because what if an individual behavior is better or more efficient? And James gave an example of how there was a study on how, I don't know what specific monkey, but monkeys cracking nuts to get to the seed, to eat the seed. One type of monkey had a really good way of cracking the nuts, very efficient way. They joined another group where they were doing it a different way and they were struggling. And the monkey abandoned its efficient nut cracking method to go along with the struggling method. And this is a very powerful concept. This is basically saying that the reward of being accepted is greater than the reward of winning an argument, of being right. Because again, we are tribal animals. We want to be accepted into the group, so we are going to take on the habits of that group. Fitting in is very attractive over challenging that status quo. And what does this mean from a habit perspective? Well, if you have a group that is doing habits that you want as well, or rather, if you're trying to become, I don't know, a better at studying physics, then you're going to want to join a large study group where everybody's studying physics. It's going to make it maybe that much more powerful. I think that's what James is trying to say here. Lastly, we have imitating the powerful. So, it's no secret that we like status, we like respect, we like power, and we're drawn to behaviors that are going to earn that respect, admiration, that money or financial wealth. So who better to exhibit habits of than those who are successful themselves? So if a business is successful, you tend to imitate what they do. If a person's very successful as a great football player, you tend to adhere to their practice schedule or how they train, etc. So you basically are replicating what's working and getting rid of everything else. Essentially, these people are successful for a reason. I want to be successful, so I imitate what they are doing. It's kind of self-explanatory, but those are the ways in which you can make a habit more attractive, is if you find other people, or if you find a lot of people, or if you find people who are close to you who are doing those habits. I think that's a good way to summarize it. And speaking of, we are at our summary right now. So all in all, culture determines attractive behaviors, or it can determine attractive behaviors. We perform the habits that make us fit into our own tribes, and we imitate these three groups. We tend to imitate those who are close to us, like family and friends. We tend to imitate the sheer number of people that are doing a habit, like those within a certain tribe or group. And then we tend to imitate those habits of people with prestige and status, the powerful people, those who have huge success in business or in life, etc. So to build the habits that you want, join a culture that is already doing that desired behavior and follow that. And that could be another way to make a habit attractive. And with that, thank you guys very much for listening. We'll be back next time with more Atomic Habits. Check out the podcast. Interviewed Dr. Paul Moreland. We talked about demography. Very interesting conversation. Very good book. And he's written a couple books on demography. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.